Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome in today for episode 96 of the Podwans podcast. I'm your host, Char J, joined by my co-host, Hereth.
Hello.
Hope everyone's having a fantastic Thursday night. For those of you who are wondering, Luke is not here today. He is currently having he's going to be attending a wedding, so he's got some planning to do. So he'll be taking some time away from the podcast, but Hereth and I will be taking the reins of this episode. Today, we're going to be talking about Season 3, Episodes 12 and 13, aka the Ghosts of Geonosis arc. We got two guests on to talk about Saw Gerrera, a little bit of Clone Wars flashbacks, Captain Rex, and a bunch of fun things. Hereth, we ready to go?
Yep.
Let's do it.
The Jedi Knights are all but destroyed, and yet your task is not complete, Inquisitor. The Emperor has foreseen a new threat rising against him. The Podwans Podcast.
We are back. Okay, so we have two guests on today, as I mentioned before, one returner and one newcomer to Podwans, and we're excited to introduce them right now. So let's bring our returner in for this episode. She has appeared on our show many times. She is the Cassian Andor stan, the Rogue One stan, the Jyn Erso lover, the Saw Gerrera lover, and everything in the realm of Rogue One, anything by Tony Gilroy basically is in her loophole. Let's bring in M at Stardust M.
Hello. Long time no
Hi.
see.
Hey, the last time I talked to you, we were talking about Kino Loy swimming. Any update on that?
Yes.
Okay.
I still hope he can't swim. I'm sorry.
I hope that he got one of those life, when like they throw it out of the boat.
I saw one at Celebration. There's a guy in London running around during the Kino one way out chant. There's a guy who literally was wearing one of those.
Get him some floaties. But Emma, how are you? How you been? Last time I talked to you was last week? 2 weeks ago?
Yeah,
I mean, you
last
were
week.
here pretty recently. Last week, you were here really recently.
Last week.
Sometimes I lose track of time, but yeah. Em, where can the good people find you on social media?
Yeah, you can find me on TikTok at Stardust M. You should go like my Eldani Rebels edit. I put so much effort to it, and it's flopping so hard over there. And then you can also find me on TikTok and Instagram at _Stardust M. And you can listen to my podcast, Because We're in Relay, which I host with my friends Liv and Hay.
Awesome. It's glad to have you back.
Yes,
this episode completely suits you. I mean, it's got Saw Gerrera, one of your favorite characters, and I'm sure you're super excited to talk about him today. Thank you for coming on. Now, let's bring in our second guest, a newcomer to the Podwans podcast. We have seen him a lot of the times in the Twitter space, and Luke is close with him, and hopefully I'll become closer with him today. Let's bring in Austin at Austin SWE.
Hello. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. It feels weird because I always watch the podcast, but now I'm here talking to you guys. I can interact.
Yeah, I've seen you in the chat a few times. You were in last week, right?
Yes. Yeah, because I had to prepare. I was like, oh man, I'm coming out to the podcast.
Just get a feel of the aroma. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
we're chill. We like talking, just having a good time. But Austin, where can the good people find you on social media?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at SWE Austin and Twitter SWE Austin 0. I just do Star Wars stuff on both platforms.
Awesome. All right. So, Hereth, be ready to get into the icebreaker question because I have one icebreaker question to ask.
Let's break into it.
All right. So, as I mentioned before, we're going to be covering Season 3, Episodes 12 and 13, The Ghosts of Geonosis. And the icebreaker for today's episode has to do with something that Saw Gerrera mentioned and a recent game that came out. It's called Jedi Survivor. So in the arc, Saw Gerrera tells Kanan and Ezra that he never thought he'd meet another Jedi, much less two. In Jedi Survivor, we learned that Cal is closely working with Saw Gerrera. So do you think Cal makes it out of does he survive before Rebels, or is he going to be around after Rebels?
I think if there's one thing Saul loves to do, it's lie.
Because
man loves to lie.
from what I'm feeling, it's either Cal leaves Saw or Cal goes bye-bye. But
Char, there's just things I know because I've beaten the game, and I don't know if I want to just fully just go into spoiler territory or just kind of leave it there.
don't go into spoiler territory. I mean,
so wait, Char, have you finished the game?
I have.
Okay, so I don't want to go into spoilers like Hereth. So I don't know, but I think that he would live after Rebels. At least I hope. Just that just based off hope. Rebellions are built on hope, and that's all I have for Cal at this point. So hopefully,
yeah. Because when rewatching this, I was like, wait,
yeah.
is Cal not connect? Does he just? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Take of it what you will.
Yeah, I think he'll live once again. I think Saw Gerrera just lies. I think he has no reason to tell the truth to these people. Like he doesn't know.
He's very witty when it comes to conversation, especially in Andor when he's talking to Luthen about Ansel Krieger. And he's like, oh yeah, and then Ansel Krieger just gets bombed, and he's like, oh okay, I had no idea. What was this about?
Like Luthen lies, Mon Mothma all lies. They all lie.
Yeah, all for the sake of defeating the Empire. But
yes,
for the greater good.
Yeah, each one has their own separate motives, but it's all in the greater good. But yeah, everyone in the chat, let me know what you think. What's going to become of Cal in the future? Do you think he's going to live past the Empire? Do you think maybe he's going to perish before Episode 4? Let me know. But
if they continue the whole 5-year jump after every game, we could the third game be during Rebel Season 1 Andor? That's always an option they could pull out.
Potentially. Because, I mean, this episode takes place 2 years before Rogue One.
Yeah.
And Survivor takes place in 9 BBY. So.
And Cal's whole thing could be maybe he doesn't want to be, he's fine working with Saw. He trusts Saw, but, maybe he's a little shaky on the Alliance and doesn't exactly know where the Alliance would stand on Jedi. So maybe he's not sure about that.
Yeah, little did he know, because when Bale was in the mix, Bale was like, all right, I've been around plenty of Jedi. I have no problem working with them. But anywho, I digress. Let's dive into the story of Ghosts of Geonosis. Obviously, from the screen, that is not me. I do not have gray hair and a beard, but I will be taking that guy's spot right now. But let's dive into the story. So, I have 2 questions about the story of this episode because there's a lot of things that happen. I mean, this is a 2-episode arc. They're all connected. They're back to back. A lot of things happen. From the first episode, I want to ask you guys. We once again return to Geonosis, but this time it's vastly different. When you viewed this arc for the first time, did you feel any remorse for the Geonosians after what happened to the Separatist Alliance and the Geonosian species?
I did, definitely. I think so. Especially, why can I not remember his name now? Click Clack. When I met that character, it's gotta feel bad for the Geonosians, and I loved him and just sympathized for him the whole time. But yeah, it was interesting seeing Geonosis again in this time period.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes, I would say, yeah, especially after now rewatching this after reading Catalyst and, really knowing what Krennic did to them and what they did to build the Death Star, I definitely feel sympathy for them. And it's just kind of we were talking about next week, just another example of the Empire stripping a planet for everything they have until there's nothing left to give and having absolutely no remorse about it and just using it as another way to control people.
Yeah, I mean, just like what happened with Ilum on Fallen Order. just taking every single kyber crystal you can get until there's nothing left, until there's a
Yeah.
giant crater that another alliance will or order will use. But yeah, it was a weird feeling just seeing, because when you watch the prequels and the Clone Wars, you're all for the Republic. There's some that do support the Separatists because they kind of see like the corruption between the Senate, but everyone's for the Republic majority of the time. But when you see the Geonosians and you see what happened to the Separatists post Order 66, and seeing like how the Separatists were actually, they were okay, but they were at the wrong spot at the wrong time, and their intentions weren't their own. But then the Geonosians, they get a bad rap because everyone doesn't like bugs. I feel like if you see a spider on the wall, you're not like, ooh, let me grab. No. So the fact that they went this way with Click Clack and the Geonosians, it's very, I don't know, it like kind of hurts in a way, but it's like you remember the Clone Wars and you remember the Geonosians and you remember how like one of them almost pushed Padme to her death. But yeah, anyway, Hereth, what were your thoughts on the portrayal of the Geonosians in this?
I mean, there's literally no way you cannot feel sympathy for what happened to the Geonosians. Like, the fact that, like Em said, the Empire was like, oh, we're just going to come in, mine this planet to literally until it's ash, and then just poison everybody and leave. Plus, with what happened in the Clone Wars, with how they were used by Dooku and the Nemoidians, the Trade Federation, to basically further their own goals. So, yeah, they literally created weapons of mass destruction, lost the war, and then the Empire was like, hey, we're just going to strip everything and make our own super weapon. You're no longer useful. We're just gonna kill you all.
Yeah, I mean that's the saddest part, because like in the one with Rex when he teams up with the droids. I'm forgetting the episode of that. Is it the final battle? That's what it's called, the final battle. It's a few episodes we covered when you have droids working with Rex to defeat the Empire, because like the Empire is like, because at that point the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and you have to like move on because there's one main target you got to face is the Empire. And I just love that like old wounds become friends in a sense.
And also building off of that, I love how Last Battle plays into this arc, because it's like, well, yes, Rex has gotten over his PTSD of what happens. We kind of get the contrast of that with Saw Gerrera, of kind of Rex being like, holy shit, you're letting your trauma kind of just drive you to this extreme that's like unheard of. And he's kind of just explaining it to Ezra, like the audience, of like, yeah, Steela's death basically has pushed him over the edge.
Yeah. Austin M, do you have any other pointers about like the vibe of Geonosis, like what Click Clack's plan was when he was defending the place? Because from the episode, he was terrified, even though he was he was doing little mischievous stuff. He was scared. He was very scared after all the events that ensued on the planet. But yeah, any thoughts on what the planet was like and how like everything was set up in terms of like the shield generator and the droidicas sitting in the sand, and like it was crazy rewatching that again.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting. There was this whole sandstorm kind of reminded me of that deleted scene from Return of the Jedi where all the sand is blowing, but that's just a side thing. But
oh yeah,
no,
when 3PO and R2 walk through the sandstorm, and then there's Luke. Oh no, when when they escape the sail barge and they're
trying to get to the Falcon.
Right. Yeah,
and you have like they're like wearing their coats over their heads and stuff. I love that. So that kind of reminded me of that. But no, like I said, it is interesting seeing Geonosis here. It was like, I feel like when I first watched the episode all those years ago, I had to watch both of them again because it was kind of like very informational. Lots of information at once about what's going on with this planet, and took me a while to even grasp what Click Clack was actually doing. And once we get to the end and see him go down, it's like, oh, okay, makes sense. But yeah.
Oh, M, any thing you got to say about the first question?
No.
Okay.
Also,
the prequels are not my era, so
yeah.
I also wanted to bring up Pat's comment of because it is related to the question of how Geonosis is to now of like. Again, because he says, if you remember the Clone Wars Geonosis arc, the Republic hit the planet pretty hard in society. They destroyed all of its industries in return because of one factory.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that was during the second battle, right? When
Yeah.
the factory gets destroyed. Yeah, that was a lot of shit happens. It's called war. The Clone Wars. Yeah, everything that's happened on Geonosis over the past 20 years since the first battle. Place is a wasteland now. But yeah. Well, anywho, let's dive into the second question, which is mainly about Saw Gerrera. So I want to talk about the ruthlessness of Saw Gerrera because there was a point in the episode where he drops his hollow projector on the ground and Ezra picks it up and he sees Steela, Saw's sister that he lost during the Clone Wars. And he's, very angry about it. He's very like, give me that. What are you doing with that? And so he's got like a spot in his heart that he still has, but he will never show it. He'll never express it. He's very he will close his chest. He will not express anything to anybody except hatred, unless it's towards the Empire, because Empire bad, always bad. But there was a time where, so when Click Clack is about to be taken on the Ghost to go get questioned about what the circle within the circle is, because at the end of this episode, at the end of this arc, they don't know what it is. They still don't know what it is, even though he drew circle within a circle 3-4 times. They still didn't understand it. But Saw was about to execute Click Clack because he just has this ruthlessness and animosity towards anyone that's going to get in his way of information and success. So how does this Saw Gerrera kind of shift between Andor, Rogue One, and everything? Because as time goes on, from when you see him in the Clone Wars till this point, he is vastly different. But yeah, if you guys want to just think about the progression of Saw's character from when we first see him till now.
Yeah, I mean, I think this episode, of all Saw's appearances, I think it's one of the ones that actually treat his character better. Even though like a lot of the there's quite a few things where it's like, okay, wow, like that's pretty extreme. But then it's also kind of one of the only ones that, like, by the end of it, he's like, no, yeah, I'll let this guy live. And no, I've lost people before. He kind of learns somewhat of a lesson here, and so I enjoyed that aspect. But it makes sense why he would act the way he does. And I think a lot of the characters, like, Kanan is like, I don't blame him. Like, and I think Rex, like Hereth said, like, Rex can relate to Saw, I feel like, in a lot of ways, and has overcome feeling that, like, anger and just ready to get anyone out of his way that is, stopping him from what he thinks is the right way of doing things. But I that's the thing about Saw Gerrera. It's like, I don't 100% like agree with everything he does, but I think like it is very justified within his story. And then too, a lot of the times, like, he is pretty he is kind of speaking logically. Like, Click Clack did have like the information that he needed, and like, everybody agrees, like, yeah, we need to figure it out, how he was going about getting that information. Maybe the Ghost crew didn't agree with, but they were just trying to get the information, all had the same goal. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just Saw's paranoia getting to him. We know from the Rogue One novelization and Rebel Rising that Jin kind of sees that, like, how far that it's kind of gotten him. But I mean, I feel like a lot of people don't talk about the fact that like it is like this is the manifestation of, you know, the real life trauma, or the trauma that happens when you spend your entire life fighting a fascist regime, when you have seen your family and friends get killed, when you have to adopt a child because her mother was killed and the Empire stole her father so they could build a super weapon that will ultimately kill both you and her. Like, when you're not sure who you can trust because people can be spies, or, you know, the Empire is not above doing anything to quell or to crush the rebellion. The one thing I always talk about with Saw is Frantz Fanon's Wretched of the Earth. He talks about how violence can be justified, like, or you have to use violence sometimes, the colonized, to get out from under the colonizer. And oftentimes the fact that like the oppressor will not respond to anything but violence. So I think that like is something that we can clearly see in Saw, is that idea that like the Empire will not respond to anything but violence. Bale and Mon Moth can try, but they are failing. And this is the only way that I've seen to get their attention, to make any sort of progress towards being free. Yeah. And I mean, and I think it's also interesting too how you know, when you talk about the progression of Saw's character, how part of that also comes from his physical appearance. The fact that like he becomes more armored as the story goes on. In Andor they show him less armored, but he slips. You like when he first picks up Jyn, he has like a limp, but you know, by the time we see him in Rogue One, he has like a fully like cybernetic foot. He has a breathing machine because of injuries. Like it's always really interesting to see like how his mental decline kind of is attached to physically as well, seeing him decline because of just like the stress and the injuries that he's gotten in this fight.
Yeah, and it's fun to know that his breathing problems came from Geonosis with the chemicals and the toxins that are just in the air on Geonosis.
Yeah,
and the sand getting in his lungs, and it affected him. That's a cool thing that I learned. It was like him being on there was the reason why his breathing is so bad.
Well, because he was so paranoid at finding the Death Star, he basically was just circling around Geonosis until he broke his lungs.
Crazy. That just blows my mind that we just see him here, and he's just like, let's find whatever we got to find. And then, you know, fast forward 2 years later, but yeah, anything else you want to add about Saw Gerrera, Hereth?
I mean, I just find it funny. Like, I still think one of the most ironically funny moment in Rebels is when Hera pulls Kanan aside. It's like, hey, so Saw Gerrera is a little bit on this insane side, and then you just cut to Saw Gerrera beating the shit out of Click Clack. I think that's still one of like the funniest like cross cuts. Like, I know like it's a serious scene. I just find it so funny that it just goes from, man, we really shouldn't trust Saw Gerrera to just shocking him, and you're just like, whoa.
Also, Hera, big talk when your fucking droid has killed. Oh, big talk. Saw Gerrera's an extremist. Your droid literally pushed another droid out the fucking ship.
Also, the fact that like Saw literally holds the entire species of the Geonosians hostage by literally just grabbing the egg and just putting a gun at it. You're just like, what the hell, Saw?
And I support him. And honestly, do what you have to do. I'm on your side.
That's so funny. But Yeah. Anything else you want to add before we dive into the lore of this episode?
Let's just jump into lore.
All right, let's dive into the lore of Ghosts of Geonosis.
Don't be too proud of this podcast you constructed. The ability to tell 3 interesting facts is insignificant next to the power of the law.
All right, so this is actually my segment, the lore. That guy right there you saw, that's me without the mustache, because the mustache is beautiful. But I was told otherwise because these guys are meanies. All right, so the lore for this episode is titled Borderline Extinction. Yeah, crazy. In this episode, we learn that the Geonosians are about to become extinct after the Empire wiped them out after assisting the construction of the Death Star. In Star Wars, there are a few species that have been near extinction. Some examples: the Rakatan Empire going extinct, the Zepho being extinct, the Lasat being borderline extinct, and even animals too, like the mythosaur was once thought to be extinct. And a lot of the times that's just either a massive event that happens or just as time goes on, they just get taken off. But what was one moment in Star Wars that made you think, like, how did they survive this? Because there's been a lot of massive events, but just somehow they were able to just make it through. Yeah, also the Taun. The Taun also made it alive. They were extinct too.
I guess not a species, but the 2 planets in the High Republic Phase 2, I forget the names / don't know how to pronounce them. But yeah, those 2. I know they were just barely, but like it was almost evolving to like straight up chemical warfare. So I'm surprised that a marriage was even able to kind of solve that.
Wait, which one was this in? Was this in Convergence,
Yeah,
Cataclysm?
the Forever War.
It's Fontu and Ceres planets.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Nicholas in the comments got me.
Yeah. Rono and Irem. Yeah. Irem's been around for a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, but like that like war was just so like the way that they describe it and yeah, what it was like leading up to with like poison and stuff is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, hell, even the Wookiees were during like the Imperial era were almost extinct as well, because the clones were just like, either we're going to put them in chains or we're going to just kill them because they're ruthless, and that's what the Empire is all about. And it's unfortunate, but that's just how I guess things are. But Austin, what was one moment in Star Wars where you were like, how the hell did they survive this? It could be a group, it could be a species, it could be whatever you want.
I see. I think one of the moments in Star Wars that I've been thinking about recently is when it's the duel between Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Dooku, and Obi-Wan gets thrown, and then a giant platform lands right on his head. How does he survive that? But also, like, the emotional trauma that these characters have, like, how did they survive that? Like, Leia has lost everyone. How did she survive that? Like, there's this, it's kind of, or like Obi-Wan, like, how did he survive going through what happened with Anakin? Like, that's the stuff
with like mentally.
Yeah, like how do you get through that? I mean, I guess there's a series about it, but
Oh no,
Also,
6
like,
episode
Kira
series.
lived in the sewers. I don't know how they didn't. Their vaccinations on Corellia must be so fucking strong.
yeah.
Like, I'm trying to think of other examples. Like, Captain Phasma on Starkiller Base.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, how did she survive that? You know. What else?
It's not like there's a comic series about how she survived, but you know.
Yeah, there is. But like, if you're someone who just views the movies, you kind of think like, wait, she got off of that supernova.
I mean, how did she even survive living on her planet. If you've read Phasma,
Yeah.
like that shit was rough. You
I
know,
Yeah,
mean-
like if you read the Phasma book by Delilah S. Dawson, that book goes hard. Yeah, you learn about her family life, you learn about her developing relationship, or not relationship, but like close contact with Hux and their schemes with, Papa Hux. And yeah, it's wild how sometimes a character is like, wait, how are you here? But somehow just making it alive. Like, I'm still amazed. Like, I always had hope because Boba Fett's my favorite character and how he survived the Sarlacc pit. It was in Legends, but he survived it. And we figure out how, but I mean, no one survives a Sarlacc pit. If you're in, you're in. Like, that's it.
Right.
But somehow you just found a way.
M just
I'm
made me
not
go
even
like
gonna mention the name Mace Windu. I don't know.
M just is making me go to like High Republic brain rot with. I'm just thinking about the Amaxian warriors, or more specifically, the Drengir in Into the Dark. Like the fact that they were in stasis for 1,000 years in statues, more or less, and then the Jedi were like, "Oh, let's just move them back to Coruscant, see what happens." Nothing bad's gonna happen.
Yay, Reed Silas.
Woo!
they fucked around and they found out.
Found out.
Yeah.
Again, like just like the whole like, not even just like them unfreezing them, just like the whole fact that they survived that entire encounter, like them unfreezing the Drengir, the Nile basically being undercover there, refighting what is it? What is his name? Is it Daxon?
Oh yeah, whoever.
The guy that gets like corrupted by the Drengir and like gets
Oh, you're
brought
talking about
back.
the guy who takes the bearish vow at the end?
Yeah.
Oh,
His name starts with
Yeah,
a D. I'm forgetting his name.
it starts. It's
It's
not
like
Dex,
Dazin or something. I'm forgetting.
yeah, something like that. Not Skier.
No, Skier's not
Yeah.
in Into the Dark.
Reese, like
Former's master at the
Padawan's
apprentice.
brother.
Yeah, I'm just trying to recall. Skier wasn't in Into the Dark. He was mentioned, but he wasn't in it.
No, he wasn't in it. All of the Skier stuff mainly happens in
Yeah.
the comics.
Because, I mean, there was a Jorah Mali reference in the book because of what happened in the book prior. But, yeah, and with Skier, whatever. But, yeah, like, even the Jedi Order, like the amount of times where we've seen Jedi survive Order 66. We're like, how did they get out of that? Like Keller and Beck in The Mandalorian. Like, he's over here holding off an entire battalion with 2 sabers while also saving Grogu. Like, it's incredible. And he got shot down by an LEAT and just somehow managed to escape. We're like, how?
Because he's Keller and Beck, that's fucking why.
Yeah. Like, sometimes, like, Star Wars has, like, this ability to, like, have something you may think it's impossible be possible. But it's like, there's no way. like
Fantasy.
like back when Callus was talking to Zeb about the Lasat, and then when Callus,
Sorry.
wait, what?
Dez.
Oh,
Dez
Des
is his
Ryden.
name.
Des
Oh,
Ryden. That's his
Dez.
name. Yes.
So close with Dex. That's why I was.
Yeah, I knew it had a D and a Z in it. That's why I said Dazin or whatever. But when Zeb meets up with the other honor guard, and for what's the old lady's name?
Oh, the oldest and
Yeah,
oh god, what's her name?
I think she has like a 3-part name. I'm not sure, but seeing him being around other Lasad, he was like, "There's more," because he was under the impression that he was the only one left, and that's the unfortunate reality for some species in here because the Empire just wants to go, bye. We don't care about you. We don't need you. You're not important anymore. We'll just discard you, and it sucks. It sucks sometimes when you see the destruction of something that didn't even need to be destroyed. But that's Star Wars, like the Jedi Order didn't need to be destroyed, but it was. And every single time you watch Revenge of the Sith, you wish you could change it, but you can't.
I mean,
But yeah.
speaking of Order 66, like how do they survive? I always laugh at Obi-Wan just like getting shot off a cliff and just falling into water, just somehow surviving. Like he literally was like, I don't know, like what would you say, like 500 to 1,000 feet in the air, gets shot, and then literally falls into water and survives.
He's good at belly flops. He trains. But even Rogue One, when they survive Jeddah, when they all get on the U-wing and they're all just out of there, like what? Like not even one rocket them? Like like someone just survived a Death Star blast? Really? Oh.
They had a droid on their side.
Yeah. There's a problem. There's no horizon. One of my favorite quotes in all the movie. But yeah, any final thoughts about borderline destruction for anybody or any group that you thought maybe should not have survived, but they have?
Last and Survivor spoilers. Anyway.
I was like, I guess phase 3, we'll see what happens with the Nile.
Yeah.
At least we know Vanestra has plot armor.
Yeah, Vanessa does, but Margie Road does not.
I'm curious what happens with the Nihil because it's not long after 100 years we'll get to the fall of the Republic. So
yeah,
I just want to know what they're up to. Maybe they're all on Iriadu, just drinking with having a fun time, or maybe they're just gone. Maybe they're just
dead.
yeah. Maybe Markian will still be alive, but
So true.
who knows? Maybe he'll retire and build a cantina like Grease. But anyway, I digress. Let's move into the interconnectedness for my boy Hereth Productions.
In my experience, there's no such thing as luck.
And let's get into interconnectedness, even though technically you already kind of touched on Saw Gerrera with the whole like previous depiction thing. I'm just going to slant it a little bit because of I knew when I was writing interconnectedness, I knew I was going to go Saw Gerrera because I hadn't read Catalyst. So I knew I couldn't dive into that fully as much as I wanted to.
That's
let's
also
talk.
Saw Gerrera.
So let's talk about Saw Gerrera's characterization and how like different writers handle Saw Gerrera because he has so many goddamn appearances in canon. We got the Onderon arc, we got Bad Batch, we got Fallen Order, we got the solo novelization, Rebel Rising, Rogue One. Just trying to think of all the different writers. So Catalyst. So how does Dave Filoni? Obviously, he created the character. How does he handle the differences characterizing Saw versus Tony Gilroy, Beth Revis, James Lucino,
Gareth Edwards.
I mean, yeah, Gareth Edwards, partially. Oh, you said that? I want to hear why.
Peace and love. That man should never write Saw Gerrera again. And I will scream it from the mountaintops. He loves to have Saw Gerrera as like, look at this extremist versus this nice white lady. Like, we know what you're doing, Dave. It's not very subtle. He just loves to like. I don't understand how a man who created Saw Gerrera's trauma seems to have such little regard for how that affects his character decisions and why he thinks that suddenly other characters are better because they like handle their trauma like differently or whatever. I don't love it, but Beth Revis, my beloved, the only woman to ever no, I'm kidding. But the way that she writes Saw Gerrera, the way that she specifically shows a softer side of him by putting him in this parental father figure role is so good, and it's so beautiful. James Lucero also does a pretty good job. It's a younger Saw, but he even does a pretty good job like working in that relationship. Like Jin asks if Saw can stay with them on Lamu, and it's really sweet. But yeah, I think that, and I think the writers of Andor and Rogue One also did pretty good. And then in addition, kind of Alexander Freed because I think obviously Alexander Freed was working off of like Rogue One, but the way he adds to Saw's inner dialogue specifically, and Jin's inner dialogue in the scene that their meeting scene again, is really good, and like how he kind of processes all those complicated emotions that go along with that relationship. Yeah, and I also particularly really love the way that Beth Rivas writes Saw Gerrera's outlook on the rebellion, and also how his relationship in losing Steela. Also, one thing I also have a major issue with Dave Filoni for is you'll notice that every other writer specifically shows Saw surrounded by his partisans. And Beth Rivas specifically hits on the fact that Saw is his partisans love him. They want to follow him. He's very charismatic. They believe truly in him and what he's and that he's going to lead them. Dave Filoni in Rebels specifically always shows him alone. And it further pushes this idea that like, no, he's so extreme. Like it's crazy. Like he's insane. Like nobody like wants that, like except for like even in the one Rebels, it's only 2 tubes that is with him. But then like everyone else shows, yeah, like he's surrounded by his partisans and all that, like, which that makes a big difference in the characterization. Like when you show someone alone, it further tries to push this idea that like he's so outside and like nobody like good or like respectable would like whatever like agree with him, when that's like not the case at all. And like he does have a lot of people who are extremely loyal to him, like 2 tubes. Like we can see that like him in particular has been with Saw for at least five years. We know the partisan Lasat stayed with Saw from everything that happened with the like Callus up until the events of Rebel Rising. Like, and even Survivor, if Cal is still working with Saw, that shows that's 5 years that Cal like consistently worked with Saw. Like that's
and Fallen Order with him giving the Wookiees and the Kashyyyk, the partisans, basically helping them, give them weapons to fight against the Empire, give them a fighting chance.
Yeah, like that's a really big issue that I have like with Dave writing him. In Rebels, at least. Clone Wars, it's a little different, but yeah, I'll let other people talk. Sorry.
No, that was perfect. I mean, I love that you mentioned that fact. I never really noticed that, how Filoni always like puts him alone.
Yeah.
And then other times he's like, it feels like that he's like a mafia boss and he needs guards.
Yeah.
And he's like, he's one of those guys that has like those guys entering the front doors like password. Like that's how it feels like. He feels like he feels like a Falcone in Batman.
Yeah.
You know,
but like his isolation, like the isolation of him is really different from the other scenes where like he does generally surround himself with people, and like he doesn't trust people as openly, at least not like after Jin. Like he did really rely on Jin, but
I wonder why. Anyway.
But like even on Jedha, like you can see how full that base is. Like it's a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're over here playing games and hanging out, and you know,
Right.
Borgullet's just
It's like a rec room.
Yeah. Yeah, Austin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Emily. Like, you know, I feel like a lot of writers, some writers, they take Saw Gerrera and use him to show like how good other characters are. Like, oh, this is how, you know, Ezra, like showing how he's just morally better than Saw Gerrera because, you know, he would never think to fight this way. Same with the whole Ghost crew. And it's like, yeah, that's great and all. Like they fight a different way, but I feel like they're able to show that without putting down another character like Saw Gerrera. It's not the best thing in Star Wars. Also, I almost got whiplash from hearing you guys say that Dave Filoni created the character, because I never even realized that. Like I knew like he showed up for the first time in Clone Wars, but it never like clicked. Like, oh, Dave Filoni, the one that I really don't want writing him is the one.
Yeah, we're like, wait, Clone Wars, Onderon. I remember.
Right.
he's so intrinsic to the rebellion at this point that like he feels like such a rebellion empire, Age of Empire era character that you
Yeah.
do forget that like you're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, because wasn't it at first like it wasn't even supposed to be Saw Gerrera and Rogue One, but then it was like, oh well, all the dots connect here, so might as well make it Saw Gerrera. I feel like that's where a lot of the disconnect comes from for me, where I'm just like, but I don't know. I love Saw, and like Emily said in Rebel Rising, like best appearance, but that's also just my favorite Star Wars book. So.
Yeah, and again, I also find it like interesting, like I said, like going back to the whole like, because again, like I love how different writers characterize different characters, but especially with Saw, like I said, I think Filoni kind of just falls into the trap of like, oh, let's push the extremism of Saw and like push it to like the 10th level extreme, like, which is weird because Saw Gerrera is part of the Rebel Alliance symbol. It's literally Phoenix Squadron mixed with partisans equal Rebel Alliance. So it's very interesting that, like you said, like that they always try to push Saw Gerrera as the outsider. Mon Mothma and Bail Organa could never agree with Saw's motives. He goes too far. He pushes to the extreme. But again, it's like obviously
Also-
by the time of Rogue One it makes sense, but like during Rebels,
Yeah.
you're just like, no,
Also-
like he's in the right here.
Also, like, talk as much shit as you want about Saw Gerrera, but like, without him, you'd all be dead. You would have lost because if he's not there, if he doesn't raise Jyn Erso,
You don't get
who's
circle
stealing
within
the Death Star
circle.
plans? Yeah, like you don't get it. Like it's just like, I mean, and I think also like a huge thing with Saw is the fact that like none of these stories are from his perspective. He's always a supporting character. Like even in Rebel Rising, which I really love, like he's a supporting character in Jin's story. Like all of these stories he does, it's not from his own perspective, which I feel like we really need. Because I think that would change a lot of the way that like some fans perceive him. And also like it would just like really help with his character to see a little bit more of like his internal monologue, to see the kind of reflections on his trauma, on the Empire, on his plans and all of that. But like we haven't gotten that yet. Like it's not even though I feel like it's weird because there's so much time. And like people love to be like, oh, Saw shows up in everything. I was like, but collectively, his story has so many holes in it. Like you don't know what he's doing for so long, and like so there's a lot of opportunity to tell a really compelling story from Saw's POV, in any time across either his whole life or like picking any time in between the ones where we don't see him.
Right, and it's like going back to the argument of like, oh, Saw Gerrera shows up in everything. It's like I don't really get that argument because every time he shows up, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. He's really active during this era.
Yeah, he's just about the only character where whenever he shows up, it feels natural. It makes perfect sense. Like people being like, oh my god, like Saw's gonna show up in Andor season 2. I'm like,
Yeah,
maybe because like he's in the Rebel Alliance and was like pretty instrumental in like finding the Death Star and like all that. Like, yeah, like I guess maybe the one place I think that could be argued would maybe be Bad Batch. That maybe is kind of his one where like it didn't have like, or at least where it's like it didn't have to be him. It could have been maybe just like any rebel. But besides that, yeah, I feel like it makes sense wherever he shows up.
and like going back to the Andor season 2 thing, because again, when I was writing this question, I was looking. I don't like using Wikipedia as a source because I never read the article. I always just look at the sources. There's a pretty massive gap in Saw Gerrera's story between 2 BBY and 1 BBY, where we just don't know what he's doing. So there's still a good year where we could fill the story.
That a lot of the time before he met Jyn is like we have like a couple of places, but like a lot of the stuff between the fall of the Republic and his adoption of Jyn is really not there. Even him adopting Jyn, he went on a lot of missions on his own.
Yeah, and one of the really cool stories is because I believe it's in the Solo novelization that that Saw introduces Jyn to Emphas Nest. And I thought that was a really, really cool connection between the two.
Yeah, I loved that so much. I think that's so cool. I think it's cool because I think Enfys and Saw are really similar, and I think that's cool.
Yeah.
And then of course, like just connecting the two standalone films in that way is a really cool thing, really cool connection. And it just makes me want Enfys in Andor so badly. And Erin Kellyman said she wanted to be in Andor.
Bring her in. We need her.
We need her.
But I think one of the cool things is that because Enfys Nest and Saw Gerrera are two very unorthodox rebels. They don't do things like the Rebellion do. You know, the Rebellion will do according to plan. But Saw, they're like, do whatever it takes. Whatever cripples this organization that's doing harm, we'll do something to correct it. You know?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what it takes, what we have to do. They'll just do it. Like, we see Enfys Nest in Solo. Like, obviously, she has problems with Crimson Dawn and, you know, the Vandor extraction when they're trying to get the 100 kgrams of coaxium, and that just goes to crap. And Dryden Voss is like, they've been on my case for forever, and I thought that you would expect it, Tobias. And then at the end, when she offers Han, like, you know, a chance to join the rebellion, and then, you know, eventually fast forward 10 years later, and
He does.
here we are.
But that should wrap up interconnectedness. Char, are you ready for some 3 interesting facts?
I am. Are you all ready for 3 interesting facts? I am. I love this. Let's go. Let's do it. 3 interesting facts about a certain Rebels arc that you didn't know about until now. Part 35. The Ghosts of Geonosis edition. Fact 1. Similar cosmetics from Return of the Jedi. The battered Rebel helmets littering the cave floor on Geonosis are the same commando designs seen in Return of the Jedi and Rogue One, a Star Wars story. They sport Saw Gerrera's symbol seen on his tattered cape in Rogue One. Fact 2. Character design transitions. In Star Wars The Clone Wars, Saw had piercing blue eyes, while his live-action incarnation had brown eyes. This version is somewhere in the middle with green eyes. Fact 3. Geonosians in a new light. Click-Clack proved an opportunity to do something never attempted before. Create a sympathetic Geonosian. Hence why I asked that question earlier. The production team pointed towards District 9 as an example, where an insectoid alien could be turned into something other than creepy through portrayal and circumstance. And there you have it. Those are the 3 interesting facts about Ghosts of Geonosis.
Again, that's interesting. I was going to do the whole like Geonosis thing, but you beat me to it.
I mean,
Is this the first time Forrest voiced Saw in like an animated, like non-live action context?
Yes.
I think this came out. This was around the same time of Rogue One, so I mean,
It came out like 3 weeks after Rogue One,
okay.
which I remember was like, oh, exciting.
Did it
Back when-
actually? Hold on, let me. Ghosts
It was
of
2017.
Geonosis. Yeah, it came out. When did this come out?
Because wasn't it like January 2017 or February?
Ghost of Geonosis Part 1. It came out. Why is it taking so long for me to figure this out? Did you know? Okay, come on, tell me.
I have unwarranted beef with this arc in that them making Saw bald again confused everyone for the timeline of Andor. And I was like in the trenches, people being like, well, clearly it shows that this is after that. And I was like, guys, I promise you, 1, people do not have the same haircut for all the time. And I was like, I promise you, it is after. Like, people can stop shaving their heads and then start shaving their heads again.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, Saw is bald by choice. It's not he's not losing his hair. It's a choice that he makes consciously. Jin shaved his head right after he abandoned Jin. He was seriously injured. It's possible that he, 1, did not trust anyone to come near him with a blade.
Also,
and 2, he was too injured to shave his head himself.
MJ.
He does wear wigs.
Yeah, and also Austin, yeah, you are right. I was looking it up. It's January of 2017 when this episode came out, or when this arc came
Oh, so
out.
like
So
really like
like-
right after Rogue One.
yeah.
It was
So
3
Rogue One
weeks
was
after
still in
Rogue One.
theaters.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Filoni's characterization. That makes more sense with Filoni's characterization of Saw, because he was probably working off draft scripts of Rogue One. Was like, well, let's try and make this work.
Yeah, and to be fair,
And it
I think
was-
the look too is reflective of what it was in the beginning of the film and before reshoots. Because
Mhm.
there's behind the scenes stuff on Jeddah where he's bald, but then they switched, like I think in reshoots they redid his look.
Like
yeah,
the look they had when he went to go rescue Jin, and then after they
Yeah.
kind of like flip flopped. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the original trailer, I don't know if you remember this short, because again, the original trailer was the Gareth Edwards version of it. There was the Saw Gerrera of like him saying, "You remember to fight" speech, and he's bald.
Yeah, and like
Oh,
there's
that's right.
pictures of like him with Felicity on like Jeddah when they're like it's like they're talking or something and he's bald. Yeah, and then it's like in reshoots, I think they completely changed his look. And then that's why then Rebels goes back to the hair look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually a really good point. It's almost like Rogue One's a prequel.
Crazy.
Or it's a Rogue One
It's-
prequel.
It's crazy how characters in stories that are prequels to Rogue One would have characters that showed up in Rogue One.
It's almost crazy that there's like 2 years between stories, and he grows hair and cuts it off and grows it back. Like, who would have thought?
Listen,
Yeah.
Obi-Wan grew his hair back in like a week after shaving it all off to go undercover in the Clone Wars. So
Also, don't forget about Brotherhood when he shaves everything, gets rid of the mullet, then 3 months later has it back.
yes. His hair
There's
just
some
grows
really
fast.
great hair growing serums in Star Wars.
Oh my god.
It's meant for quick recovery after an undercover mission. They got something. They got something, and I feel like that we should have it. Like immediate hairdo. There you go.
But let's.
Shave your head and not be worried. But like, Hereth, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, let's write the episode.
Oh yeah, I was about to do that right now. Oh, and you just canceled me. Not in that way, but right there, you kind of canceled my input. But anyway, let's rank the Ghosts of Geonosis arc. Is it a bad ensign? Is it or ensign? My bad. I know. I remember one time Luke and I got
Ensign?
mad.
Instant evento.
Me and Luke, I know a little bit of the. So is it ensign? Is it lieutenant? Is it captain, admiral, or chef's kiss grand admiral? That's the best of the best.
We'll go with Captain.
Captain,
It's just good.
it's good. Okay. Anything in particular that either made it a captain? The things you like, things you
I
dislike.
mean, like I said earlier, I like how in the end it's like it shows that Saw Gerrera like clearly is a human being and like can sympathize and has lost people before. I did like that aspect, but kind of everything before, I didn't really like how it just felt like Saw Gerrera was there to make the rebels look really good,
Mm-hmm.
or the Ghost crew look really good, and kind of I don't know how you put it, like ruin his name in the process.
Tarnish.
Slander.
Yeah.
Slander.
Yes.
Okay, so we got a captain. What do you rank this episode?
I'll give it an admiral.
Okay.
I think it's definitely one of the clone or the Rebels episodes that I think about the most, and like when I think back on like the series, it's one that stands out to me. But yeah, I think similar to Austin, there's some things about Saw's character that I don't really love the way he's written. I don't think it's as bad as like the season 4 what they did to him, but generally I like it. And once again, I think it's cool that like in the context of like when it came out, that like it came out so soon after Rogue One, so it's like really cool to see, like for people to see what Saw's been doing. Yeah.
Awesome. So we have a captain and we have an admiral. Hereth, where do you rank this episode?
I would also give it an admiral. Like, I still think it's one of the most underrated episodes of Rebels because, like, I think if you combine these two episodes, you get like great amount of tension with the battle droids of when they're going to activate, and then the whole click clack reveal of like, oh, he's been basically hiding out and just protecting himself from the Empire, and then again you get the hilarious like Saw Gerrera moment of him being like, hey, he's not really that trustworthy, and then just cutting him, just beating the shit out of click clack. So again, I would put it at like an admiral
Not
personally.
wrong.
The thing that holds it back from a Grand Admiral personally for me is just I don't know. Like I don't really give a lot of Rebels episodes Grand Admirals except for like the like Jedi Knights, Flight of the Apprentices. Those like really big like holy shit episodes of Rebels. Like it's really good episode. I just wouldn't think of them at upper echelon.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to jump on Austin's boat. I'm going to call it a captain because I feel like there are elements of this episode that really shine. I think this was kind of taken away because they relied on the nostalgia of being on Geonosis and the Geonosians and the droids and everything that was going on there. But I mean, I don't think it really accomplished too much, but it was really just trying to express like what happened to the Geonosians. That was essentially what this arc was about. Like what happened. And we learned that, but it's still a mystery. They don't know because obviously no one speaks Geonosian unless you're...
Go read Cataclysm by James Lucero. That was basically, this episode was like a big advertisement for go read Cataclysm.
Exactly, yeah.
Catalyst, sorry, by James Lucero.
I can't even imagine fans that read Catalyst, watched Rogue One, a couple weeks later, this 2 episodes of Rebels come out. Like, that must have been an insane time to be a fan.
And then I think Rebel Rising came out after that.
So it's like all the Saw Gerrera content all at once.
Mm-hmm. So much. 2017 was a...
Yeah, Rebel Rising came out in May
of time.
2017.
And prior to that, he had one appearance. Like nowadays, it's like when Saw Gerrera shows up, it's just like, oh, it's Saw Gerrera. But back then, it was like he had only been in the Clone Wars. He was like an obscure character at the time, but now he's out there shining.
Yeah,
but at what cost?
Suddenly you're like, he had a child. He raised a child.
Sean, thank you for the $2 donation. I appreciate that. Lies,
deception. Every day,
let's
more lies.
Let's see who can do it better. Lies, deception.
Too high.
Every day, more lies.
You're trying too hard to do the Forrest Whitaker too high.
I know. His voice is very
lies, deception. Every day, like, more lies.
It's like you can't really. It's kind of hard to replicate. But yeah, but thank you so much, Sean, for the $2. I love it. Thank you. Saw is still bejeweled.
When he walks in the room, he can still make the whole place shimmer.
Yeah, but I mean, Saw was a superstar of this episode, I have to say. I mean, we had a lot of good conversations about Saw Gerrera. Yeah. Hereth, you ready to close out?
Yeah, ready to close.
Yeah. All right. But before we head out, Austin, where can good people find you on social media before we head out?
You can find me on Instagram at SWAustin and on Twitter, SWAustin0.
Where can the good people find you on social media?
You can find me on TikTok at StardustM. Once again, please go like my Shane Aldani Rebels video. I worked so fucking hard on it. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at _StardustM, and you can listen to my podcast, Kessel Run Relay, with my besties Liv and Hay. We're releasing a new episode like tomorrow, probably on the High Republic Phase 2. So
yeah, go follow Kessel Run Relay. I hope one day that I get to be invited on there.
Yes, eventually. We have plans. We're just far out from places where the 3 of you fit in episodes.
Yeah, because
we still have a lot of movies to get through.
Yeah, let's just say we ensue a lot of chaos. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate that. But Hereth, where can the good people find you?
Well, you can find me at Hereth Productions on TikTok and Instagram, Hereth_edits on Twitter, and of course, you can find me here on the Pod Ones. I also want to mention for this episode, again, we started doing it last week, that if you caught this episode live, you caught it live, but after this episode's over, it's going to go unlisted, and then we'll, in about probably a couple hours, depends how long it'll take me to edit this, you'll get a edited version of the podcast with different camera angles and more condensed conversations. It'll be the same version as the Spotify version as well. I just decided to just do it in video and audio at the same time.
All right. And you can find me here at you can find me on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at CharJ, as spelled right here. And you can find me here at the Pod Ones podcast every Thursday night as we cover our Star Wars Rebels rewatch. Check us out next week as we cover Season 3, Episode 14, titled Warhead. There we go. All right. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel if you have not already. And may the Force be with you.
Always.
Always. See you guys.
Rise!